Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Father God, we come to you because the people of this nation and this region and everything in it belong to you. We are not here by accident. You are the one who set us in this nation at this particular time for the glory of your name. For these things we pray for our leaders, not only for this great city of Harlingen, but in our region. We pray that you lead us and guide us into the right direction, now and forever. In your name, Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We welcome all of you here tonight for our meeting. Glad to have you here. And I'll call the meeting to order. With our citizen communication.
Yes, Mayor, we have Sandra Ayala, 2313 South Dilworth Road, drainage. I don't know if she's present, but if she's not, she would like for me to read her comments. Is she present? I guess not, Mayor. I'll read her comments. It reads like this. I would like to encourage all of the city commissioners to vote in favor of the adoption of a new drainage code to prevent future flooding and improve overall community drainage.
All right, thank you.
The next one is Raymond Reyes, 706 Nantucket Drive, Growth.
Good afternoon, Commission, Mayor. Raymond Reyes, 706 Nantucket Drive. So glad to see there's a lot of positive things going on for Harlingen. There's still, work like always. It's always a work in progress. There's always a lot of work to be done. One thing that came to light, there's some potential investors that are coming into the area. A particular deal almost got fumbled and dropped where they didn't make a large purchase on Jackson Street, because when the group reached out to certain departments, they didn't get the correct information, which was going to throw a matzo ball on the whole process. So, I again, as I say, it's always a work in progress. I think that as long as we keep up to date what the current policies are and stuff, and keep working towards doing positive things for Harlingen, it's going to be a good outcome for the citizens in general, and which is basically, I'm hoping, what the commission and everybody that represents the citizens of Harlingen ultimately want, where everybody has a fair chance to achieve their goals and dreams. I mean, Harlingen is a good place. I haven't moved back to San Antonio. That's where I'm from. I mean, kind of fell in love with the Valley. My wife's from here, so I would just like to see continued progress with the right steps to keep moving forward in the right direction. That's all I would ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes.
The next one is Ron Lozano, 2410 Riverside Drive. The topic is citizen communication.
Here for generations. Mr. Willingham was a genuine article. He was able to inculcate his Christian beliefs in many adherents. Alas, Tim Elliott of Elliott's Custom Golf was not one of them. In 1988, there was no market internet, as the mayor proclaims. Walmart had a little section selling, much like Elliott's, cheap equipment. Our president is off to the European theater next week due to the ongoing conflict. Is there respect on the needs of his customer on Tim's part? No. He cannot understand the hurt inflicted on Harlingenites suffering the highest inflation in a generation. Elon's famous for not giving his mom a break on Teslas. He has a fellow traveler in custom golf. Today, this very day, a used Stealth driver is going for full retail price, though it's used and possibly damaged, because under Jeff Duran and Tim Elliott's stewardship, it's the golf course that's being destroyed. And Mr. Craig Cook, maybe an honest individual, can attest to that fact if he ever decides to follow Gabe's direction and get out on the course. Because all it's about with Mr. Elliott, unfortunately, is money. So, the FBI is investigating the dude up there that says, visit, and therefore, according to other commissioners and mayors before him, he's telling in a proclamation for us to patronize Elliott's Custom Golf. That is not ethics, but is there ever ethics by our current office holder, Boswell?
That's it, Mayor, no more. No more citizens' comment.
All right, thank you. That concludes our citizen communication. We're going to go on to these proclamations. The first one is a proclamation proclaiming March 16th, 2022 as Raul Gonzalez Day. Have the Gonzalez family come up here, please. Come on up here. All right, great. So, yeah. My brother, which one of you sent the email? Okay. I want you to turn around and face that way.
But you can put it right here. sir, if you
This
like.
is really a special day, and we're really pleased to be able to recognize this gentleman who has worked so long and so hard for the citizens of our community. We're going to recognize him with this proclamation and with something else. Whereas Raul D. Gonzalez and two of his brothers were brought from Mexico to Harlingen in 1951. In early 1952, at 15 years old, Mr. Gonzalez worked at Humble Service Station owned by Jenny Pace at 15th and Harrison Street. While employed at the service station, he met Maria Luz Ramirez Real, whom he married in 1955 and chose Harlingen as their home to raise a family. And whereas Mr. and Mrs. Gonzalez were married 66 years, raised 3 sons, Jose Miguel, Juan Manuel, Abel, 1 grandchild, Jacqueline Michelle Gonzalez Munguia, and 2 great-grandchildren. And whereas Mr. Gonzalez learned enough English to become a U.S. citizen, earned his GED, and was employed by the city of Harlingen as Parks Superintendent, and became the Parks and Recreation Director under the direction of James Ross and later Max Blassingame. And whereas he coordinated the annual Arroyo lighting displays, design and planning of the Liberty Garden grounds, including other city park areas such as Tony Butler Golf Course and other city beautification projects, has been recognized by his peers for his outstanding commitment to the Harlingen community. He was named by the Harlingen Rotary Club Man of the Year and a member of the inaugural City of Harlingen Walk of Fame. Retired from the City of Harlingen in June 1992 and immediately started working for the Harlingen Area Chamber of Commerce and maintenance supervisor for 15 years until his retirement in 2007. And therefore, I, Chris Boswell, Mayor of the City of Harlingen, on behalf of the Harlingen City Commission, hereby deem it an honor and a pleasure to extend this recognition to Mr. Raul Gonzalez for the past 30 years of service to the City of Harlingen, and hereby proclaim March 18th, 2022 as Raul Gonzalez Day, and urge all citizens to extend Mr. Gonzalez our sincere appreciation for his past dedicated services and continued support to the City of Harlingen, an outstanding citizen who has earned the respect of the community, his family, and friends. Mr. Gonzalez, congratulations. I think we're all, there's going to be a little ceremony after. Already planted the tree. Planted the tree in his honor up here. Tell the audience.
For those of you that were up here and did not attend, as you walk out of City Hall, immediately down behind it, there is a wedge of green grass, and there is a majestic oak tree located right in the corner. That tree was planted by my father in the 1970s, maybe about 1976. It was just a small oak tree, and as you can imagine, it now overpasses the whole area. But every time we would drive by here, Daddy would always say, "That's my tree," because he remembered planting it. So today, it is officially the Raul Gonzalez oak. It has a plaque, and we're very, very proud to have him recognized here within the city and within the grounds. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
No cake? You bring a cake? Ah, excellent. Is that the?
Mary's Cafe.
I got you.
Thank you. All right, so, Mrs. Elliott, will come on up. We have a proclamation commemorating the 34th anniversary of Elliott's Custom Golf. Whereas Mr. Tim Elliott, owner of Elliott's Custom Golf Shop, was born and raised in La Prairie, Texas, and graduated from the University of Texas, Austin in 1975. And whereas Elliott's Custom Golf Shop opened its doors in March of 1988 in Harlingen. Although there were major competition, Mr. Elliott felt the community needed a golf retailer that would genuinely respect the needs of the customers. Whereas the year 2022 marks the 34th anniversary of Elliott's Custom Golf Shop, and is a vital part of this community, and will continue to serve as a leading business in our community. Whereas the most exciting thing to Mr. Elliott is the joy of customer satisfaction, saluting the customers with a friendly smile, always putting the customer first, making new friends. Whereas Elliott's Custom Golf serves as a leading employer in our community, contributing to the city's economy, supporting local golf courses and local communities. Now therefore, Mayor Chris Boswell, on behalf of the City Commission, hereby congratulate Mr. Tim Elliott and proclaim March 16, 2022 as Elliott's Custom Golf Shop Day in the City of Harlingen. So congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Elliott. Thank you. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda are the minutes of the special meeting of September 28, 2021, and the regular City Commission meeting of October 20th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Consent agenda items 3A through J. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Item 4 is a public hearing to consider an ordinance on first reading to amend the City of Harlingen Code of Ordinances, Chapter 109, Subdivisions, Article 9, Updating and Subdivision Development Guide, Section 109-250, Adoption of Infrastructure Standards by amending the stormwater design requirement from a 25-year storm design to a 50-year storm design for subdivisions 1 to 25 acres in area.
Mayor,
Javier.
City Commissioners, good evening. This is something that the Planning and Engineering staff has been working with the Planning and Zoning Commission for several months now. A little background, the Subdivision Development Guide is an extension of the subdivision ordinance, and it was, the first one was adopted in October 7, 2020, so this is a proposed update to the existing guide. The guide sets infrastructure standards for new subdivision development within the city limits and the extraterritorial jurisdiction, the ETJ. We had several workshops, and we also had a public meeting where we presented the changes to the public. Staff is ready to present the updated guide and recommends approval of adoption of the ordinance to update the new guide. The main purpose of this new guide is to minimize flooding as much as possible for new subdivisions coming to Harlingen. The main change in the new guide is that the requirements for subdivisions 1 to 25 acres in area, the requirement will be a drainage for a 50-year storm Right now, the requirement is a drainage for a 25-year storm. So that's the biggest change in this new guide. For subdivisions, 25 acres to 100 acres is already, the requirement is already for a 50-year storm. And this is how we compare to Hidalgo County and drainage districts. The proposed change is in line with what Hidalgo County requires. The Hidalgo County Drainage District covers 90% of Hidalgo County, so it's in line with what they require. Like I mentioned before, it's in line with Hidalgo County Drainage District number 1, so it's equal to what they require. The guide, if adopted by the City Commission, will only apply to new subdivision submittals that come in after the adoption of the new guide ordinance. Anything that we're currently processing will falls under the existing guide. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on March 9. 2 people spoke in support of the proposed updated guide, and 1 person spoke in opposition. After some discussion, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of adoption of the updated subdivision development guide.
Okay, we have a public hearing on this. I'll go to the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against this proposed subdivision ordinance revision? Anyone like to speak for or against? Please come forward and state your name and your residence. And
Good evening. My name is Wendy Velasquez, 16438 Los Ranchitos. I was present at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in favor of them adopting these new guidelines, which will protect us now from flooding instead of 25 years to 50 years. I am compelled to come here today and ask this body of commissioners to also approve these guidelines that are much necessary for Harlingen. As I've expressed in this forum before, Harlingen is growing, and we're in favor of Harlingen growing. I believe that these guidelines will protect us for the future of Harlingen. I love Harlingen, and we want to make Harlingen our home. And I believe that you, sitting here right now, are in a position in the history of Harlingen to make a difference. And in years to come, when you're able to save 100 homes or 200 homes maybe, we understand not all of them are going to be saved, but if you can save a few, you will be able to look back and say, we were the ones that made a difference by adopting these new guidelines in Harlingen. I thank you so much for the time that you put into this and for your public service. And my husband and I are here in favor of adopting these guidelines. Thank you.
all right, thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against the ordinance?
Yes, Robert Leftwich, 909 East Parkwood. Yes, I'd just like to ask my commissioner, Commissioner Mesmer, I just hope that you just have done your homework on this, that you will support these changes. Your district floods, and I know you know that because it's flooded right around your house. I hope that you would support this. We've got areas in the city. I know areas in my neighborhood in Parkwood that are literally just feet from the bank of the Arroyo, and the neighborhood still floods to the point to where it will float automobiles. Mayor, your bank flooded this last time. I saw the street right beside the First Community Bank. You couldn't even drive through there. I've got a four-wheel drive dually. I had to back up. It was so deep right there, literally just 100 feet from Little Creek. The drainage is horrendous right there. I don't know why we don't do something with it now. I continue to see sidewalks being built, but we're not doing anything with these areas these pockets that flood with literally hundreds of feet from the Arroyo, which should be drained into the Arroyo. And I just ask that anybody that really cares for the community would set aside their petty politics and support these changes. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else like to speak for or against the proposed ordinance revision? Is there anyone? All right, hearing no one, I'll close the public hearing and ask the city attorney to read the caption.
An ordinance of the City of
May I ask a
Harlan.
question before you do it?
Okay?
Can we have discussion? Like, I'm very much for this, you know, the requirements, but I had a question, because it does not address, or the way I read it, is it putting the cost solely on the developers that are putting it? Because my fear is, when you make a decision like that, whatever the amount is, it's going to get passed on to the customer.
Correct.
Right? And what I wanted to know is, did we consider you know, I use the example with the city manager of, like, you know, Time Warner, or those big companies that we don't have a fiber line, and they have to invest a bunch of money because there's nothing out there. And this is for future growth, not the existing, but future growth. And it's so cost prohibitive, right? But the company itself bears the burden of doing it. And as it gets developed, there's a calculation, and it gets kind of reimbursed to the company. Can the city not come up with some kind of a supporting system to do that, so that, one, I think it would accelerate, or it would be more cost prohibitive for the developer and more cost effective for the consumer, right? Because you have to look at it from all the angles. And I'm just asking, was that considered or not? Because I think implementing it without those kind of specific guidelines, or coming up with like a partnership where we're going to agree to invest, because I think it's ultimately, it's also the city's responsibility to invest into that, right? So if we invest, the private sector, which would be the customer, invest, and the developer invest, and there's some kind of mechanism to where it doesn't either, because you're going to put all the costs on the developer, is going to drive the price of the home or the property even more. But if we can share that, and I just am asking you, have we considered that, so that it's less of an impact, and I think it would also encourage more development,
No.
or responsible development.
Yes, that was not discussed in the workshops that we had with Planning and Zoning Commission. This was never discussed, but that's something that we can look into. I know some cities that don't grow very much, they provide incentives to get subdivision development. So that's something that we can look into on some
Commissioner,
kind of incentives.
One of the things that we can consider also is that a lot of the changes that we went to the P&Z about dealt with on-site retention for a subdivision. That was a shift from what we had been doing in the past. So that a lot of this deals with just on-site retention, but I think what we can do is look at any drainage line that needs to be installed over a larger distance. We can try to have some sort of perhaps impact fee so that the developer is reimbursed for those costs.
Right, there's got to be certain tiers, right?
Right. That's not addressed, but we can certainly look at that option to come up with some alternatives for the commission to consider.
And I don't mind passing the ordinance and stuff, but I really would like to look at that, because I definitely don't want to stop progress, right? But I also wanted to look at it responsibly, right? And then to top it up, then we also have a drainage study that we asked for, right? Because it's a regional. You know, one of the biggest questions, because my uncle was a developer here for many, many years, built my home, and very smart man. He served on all those boards, and he was on the board of the developers. He was a president for a long time, passed away, right? But one of the last conversation I had with him was about drainage. And he says, you know, you can, but he had some very key points of saying, until we fix X, Y, and Z, no matter what we do going forward, it's not going to fix our problem, right? So that's why we look at the drainage as a regional issue, right? And I'm glad we're doing all that. But I don't want to go backwards, right? I want to make sure that we have the right answers. And I'm not qualified to make that determination, right? But I know, and I know that the board has very competent people that are serving and doing that. I definitely don't want to dismiss that, but that's one component of it, right? So I just want to make sure that we're looking at the economic part of it, and that we're fair with everybody. That's equitable for everybody.
Right. What I would suggest that we pass this change and then come back with some options on.
Yeah, to make sure that we're actually looking at the financial impact, that we can come up with some kind of mechanism.
We can do that.
I agree with that. I think we do need to pass this because you do bring up some good points about the economic aspect of it, but you also have to look at the other aspect of it when it comes to the economy. When we have residents like Ms. Wandy who end up having to pay like about $800,000 because that area doesn't have the proper drainage because of the standards. So I think I know I asked Gabe about to look into this. I think it was September, October when I asked him to look into it, and it's taken a couple of months, and I don't want to have any more delays to it. I'm tired of waiting for this drainage standards, and I know the residents of Harlingen have been demanding that we do something about drainage, and I think this is a good step.
And Commissioner, I don't mind passing. I just want to make sure we can come back to it.
Yeah.
And tweak it as we go, because it's a very complicated
No, I agree.
process.
I agree. It is a complicated process.
And we have, again, that's just one component of it, right? I just want to make sure we keep studying it and we keep refining it until we get the right thing. And ultimately, once we get that study done, because that's going to take a while, that we at least we've been continuing to work in the right direction, right?
But you agree with passing it right now?
Absolutely. But,
Okay.
but I want to be able to come back to it.
No, of course. We can always amend it. But I think it's very important that we pass this right now because we need it. The city needs it.
Okay, I gotta come in. Listen, sometime in August, we approved the hiring of the civil service engineering firm to do a regional comprehensive study. For one reason or another, they didn't have a signed contract till sometime in late January. I know we're 5 months behind in getting that study completed. Once that's completed, whether it be 6 months or 9 months, yes, I agree, planning and zoning, we need to revisit this, and if we have to scale back some of the stuff that we're gonna pass today, we need to. And I'm also asking that we also look and consider Cameron County Drainage District Number 5. Where do they stand? Because they have a good impact on our community. Part of their district is in Harlingen. And we need to bring in the other drainage districts in the area and the state to make sure that we try to resolve this as best and as quickly as possible. Everybody will agree.
Everybody should participate, right?
Everybody will agree. When it rains heavily in Hidalgo County, it's all gonna go downstream, and that's gonna hit us. And we have to be very, extremely proactive on all of this. So, yes, we need to revisit this as soon as they're done.
We did provide a copy to Alan Moore, and he did come in and give us some some comments rather, about the improvements that we're making.
Yeah.
So he knows what we're trying to recommend.
I mean, can we not put, like, in one of in my comments, I was saying, can we not put a group together just to look at the other aspect of it, not so much the technical part of it, but the economic part of it, and how we can do partnerships, and then Commissioner Morales brings a good point of, the irrigation district's would be a good partner, obviously, and against the developers, that everybody's at the table, right, and that we get this, because it's everybody's issue, right? And I just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to speak, and I think if we collectively work together, we're going to come up with a much better plan.
We can come up with a working group of different sectors of the community to actually give us some feedback on what we're trying to do.
Okay. Commissioner Uribe, you circulated this document earlier or handed out.
Yeah, I was gonna go through it point. I'm sorry.
Is this your?
Yes, sir. I was gonna go through it point by point, but I really didn't want to. It's kind of redundant. That's the way my mind works. But it was just the basic point is, like I said, it's not shifting all the burden onto one, because for every decision there's going to be a consequence, right? And the question when I started was, have we looked at that? Did the Planning and Zoning Commission look at that impact, and what do others cities do to tackle on? Because this is very expensive stuff. I remember during the June floods when I was doing those we're going into neighborhoods talking to them, said, look, there's nothing I'm going to tell you that's going to make you feel better, because this is a very expensive process, and like I said, there's other elements to it. This addresses the future development, but what are we doing with that current drainage and piping and all that stuff? So again, it's looking at the overall picture, and like my uncle, like I said, who passed away, says, you can change every pipe on the outside of the city, but until you fix all the other stuff, you're still going to have the same problem. And unfortunately, there's nothing. We have 15 inches an hour. We're going to have some flooding. I mean, and we can definitely, by doing improvements and pushing waterway like we did on the loop, we had those 40-acre, 9 feet deep detention ponds that they did right afterwards, that's really helped a lot in our neighborhood. It allows time for it to go away, but to really tackle it over the next 10, 15, 20, it's a long process. It's not gonna fix itself in the next couple of years, right? So I wanna make sure that we have a good blueprint.
Well, I was just going to go back to the statement here that you circulated. That was I've looked over it here, and it's very, very thoughtful. But you recommended before amending the drainage. This says, I recommend before we consider amending our drainage criteria that we establish a committee of qualified members within and around the community with experience not only in drainage but in related policy, economic matters.
Right. I just asked for that. That's what I just asked them to do, so we can. I just asked Gabe to do that.
Well, I know, but you said before amending.
Oh, I understand that, but
before amending the drainage criteria.
I understand.
I was just trying to understand whether you're.
Well, again,
Whether you think whether we should do this first.
I don't want to delay. I don't want to come off like I'm trying to delay the progress or what's absolutely necessary. But again, I'd like to tackle. I want to be able to be free to come back to the board.
Well, because because I agree that there are other alternatives that have been recommended by other engineers I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks, such as considering drainage impact fees, which might be less costly, but would allow us to collect revenue that would allow us to leverage those impact fees into grants to build regional detention facilities rather than the smaller ones that the developer's going to be forced to develop. And that also seems like a very attractive idea, and one that might be beneficial not just to a single subdivision, but to other subdivisions, already existing subdivisions, if we invested, if we directed that investment that we're going to require the developer to make into one piece of property into these regional detention facilities. And like I said, these are things that have been suggested by engineers in the past couple of weeks as the Planning and Zoning Committee has considered this. And so I think, whether this passes tonight or not, obviously drainage is a priority for all the communities in the Rio Grande Valley. Certainly a priority for us here in Harlingen, but we want to make sure that, whatever we do, there's no unintended consequences, and that we consider these other alternatives that have been suggested by others.
And that's one of the conversations I had with Gabe about putting some kind of, what did you call it?
It's an impact fee.
An impact fee. We did talk about that, but obviously.
Right, and that might be more, for some of the developers who are opposed to some of parts of this, that that might be more palatable, but also if those dollars could be redirected and leveraged into, as these engineers have recommended to me, and to regional detention facilities that are easier to maintain, and also could be used for other things like soccer field or something like that, a park.
I think that's a good thing that we could come back and look at after we pass this ordinance, because on the planning and zoning, we do have 3 qualified engineers, and both of them, on all 3 of them, including one of our construction specialists, as you noticed, it was passed 4-0. So I would like to trust the engineers that we have on the planning and zoning that this is the right thing to do. So we can always come back to, because you guys bring up some good ideas, but I think we should pass this.
But again, I just want
engineers are like lawyers; they can disagree a lot.
Yeah.
And he had 2 other engineers.
I know accountants don't agree with you.
2 other engineers that spoke at the Planning and Zoning Commission. All right. Well, let's go ahead and let me ask the city attorney to read the caption.
An ordinance of the City of Harlingen amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 109, Subdivisions, Article 9, updating the Subdivision Development Guide, Section 109-250, adoption of infrastructure standards by amending the stormwater design requirement from a 25-year storm design to a 50-year storm design for subdivisions 1 to 25 acres in area, and providing a repealer clause.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Item 5, is public hearing to consider an ordinance on first reading to amend the City of Harlingen Code of Ordinances, Chapter 109, subdivisions, Article 4, Sections 109-91D, additional content to be submitted by adding a provision which allows proposed one-lot, single-family residential subdivisions located inside the city limits to be exempt from fire hydrant requirements.
Yes, Mayor, Commissioners, there is a provision in the subdivision ordinance that for one lot subdivisions for single-family homes in the ETJ, a notarized statement with a plat note can be used instead of the required fire hydrant. But that's only in the ETJ, not inside the city limits. So the proposal is to have that fire hydrant exemption also apply to properties inside the city limits. If the property if it's a one-lot subdivision for a house and there's no fire hydrant within 500 feet, the fire department will require, based on the ordinance, will require a fire hydrant. With this ordinance change, properties inside the city limits that fall under that scenario could qualify. If they're required a fire hydrant, they could also qualify for this exemption if they provide a notarized statement and the plat note waiving the city of any liability. And that's what the plat note will say, that protects the city from any liability.
What would they also waive the neighbor's right? Let's say their house catches fire and if there's somebody neighboring their structure gets in trouble with it, would they also have to sign off on it?
No, this does not apply to neighboring properties.
It's just isolated.
Isolated, yeah. There's a lot of, so this exemption that we have in the subdivision ordinance for properties in the ETJ, the intent was to allow single-family homes to be developed because the fire hydrant requirement, a lot of times, they have a 2-inch water line or a 4-inch water line, so a fire hydrant is not feasible in such properties. So this provision in the ordinance was, the intent was to allow the development of single-family homes in rural areas, but only in the ETJ. Well, there are a lot of rural similar properties inside the city that fall under that scenario. They're rural in nature. They don't have the infrastructure for a fire hydrant, so they're not able to build a single-family home because of the fire hydrant requirement. But there's a line in the map that doesn't allow them to get this fire hydrant exemption.
The planning and zoning heard this request, correct?
Yes, this went before the planning and zoning. Also, the fire marshal is in support of this amendment, contingent on that notarized statement and on the plat note. This went before the planning and zoning commission, and they approved it unanimously with a 4-0 vote. And two people spoke in support.
If the property changes ownership, would they have to?
Well, that's the beauty of the plat note.
No,
This plat note
it's
in
on
the-
a plat, so they wouldn't require any change, yeah.
Okay.
The plat note notifies if the people ever want to sell their property, that plat note notifies the buyer that there's an issue there. Kind of like
It's a double risk.
buyer beware. Yes, that's the beauty of the plat note.
But of course, the new owner can always come back in and put a fire hydrant if they choose. It's just, they have to apply for that.
Okay, this requires a public hearing, so this time I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone like to speak for or against this ordinance? Please come forward and state your name and your residence address.
Ron Lozano, despite what I said earlier about an FBI investigation of the airport board members, one which is running for city commissioner right now, Mr. Consiglio, and the current mayor, there was about a month or two back, Mr. Cervantes can speak to this, that valuable resource of Valley International Airport right across the street.
Okay, this is about the fire
Yeah,
hydrant
and Mr.
ordinance.
Connell, he can tell
What's
you,
the
Ms.
relevant
Connell, Yvette
Fire
Connell,
hydrant ordinance.
you're not listening. That's why you're getting investigated. There is a lot that doesn't have a fire hydrant.
Not being investigated.
I spoke to you personally at the bottom of the stairwell, right after the meeting, that this,
Is there a fire tell us about
There's
whether
not
you're
a
for
fire
or
hydrant.
against.
There's not
All
a
right,
fire
you can
hydrant
sit
there.
down, sit down. Sit
There's
down.
not a- there's not a
Sit
fire
down.
hydrant.
I want the officer to ask him to escort him to his seat.
there's not a fire hydrant.
Yeah,
I addressed you.
yeah. All right,
You don't recall.
all right. This young lady would like to speak on the fire hydrant
So
ordinance.
do I.
Hi, good evening. My name is Yvette Cano. I live at the Sierra Apartments right now on Hain Drive. My husband, Raul Cano, and I were born and raised here, go back generations. Many of you probably know my father, David Gomez. He would love to be here. He's a big talker as well. And we bought a property off of FM 507 about a year, almost over a year ago. Like I said, we were born and raised here. We left for about 10 years, came back, got an education, got experience to come back to Harlingen because it's our home. We wanted to live here. So we bought that piece of property, which is rural. It's way out there, probably right on the property line, probably a couple 100 feet from FM 508, which is where the city line kind of ends. We wanted to be out there. We wanted to, build our house like my father did 35 years ago, raise our family, which is actually starting very soon. Hopefully in July. So I don't think we'll have the house built in July, but that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a house. We're not big developers. We don't have the money for 10, 11 grand for a fire hydrant that's out there. We are willing to just build our little house to raise our family, just like all of y'all did, just like we did, and then have our kids come back and then build their house or buy a house here somewhere too and keep that going because Harlingen, again, is our home. We want to be here. We don't want to live in Houston and Dallas like we've done in the past 10 years. So I ask that you support this so that we can start building our house and our family's coming up here soon so that we can, raise them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for or against the fire hydrant
Now that you do that,
ordinance?
may I speak about it now, Congressman?
No. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak for or against the fire hydrant ordinance amendment? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and ask the city attorney to read the caption.
An ordinance amending the City of Harlingen Code of Ordinances, Chapter 109, Subdivisions, Article 4, Section 109-91D, additional content to be submitted by adding a provision which allows proposed one-lot, single-family residential subdivisions located inside the city limits to be exempt from fire hydrant requirements, providing for publication, and ordaining other matters related to the foregoing.
All right, is there a motion to adopt the ordinance?
Motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Item 6, consideration of possible action to approve a memorandum of understanding between the City of Harlingen and the United States Army Training and Doctrine Command to assist military recruiting efforts and connect America with its Army and authorize the city manager to sign the MOU. Efren?
Mayor, City Commissioners, we're bringing in an MOU for authorization for the city manager to sign. This was originally brought to us by Commissioner Perez. It's a partnership with the Army's Youth Success Program, which is a way to coordinate future employment opportunities with the city, and this will assist us in recruiting veterans and allowing these folks to have a career path. So it's free to the city. There's over 1,000 different entities that have partnered with this group before, so we're recommending approval. Commissioner Perez has actually participated in a meeting with them, and he can probably share some info on that also.
This is a great program. It started in my classroom. I had some Army recruiters that came to my classroom to speak to some of my students, and then afterwards I started talking to them, and then it got, they were asking me, stuff, and then I mentioned how I was a city commissioner and what the city could do to, to assist the Army. I'm biased because I'm an Army veteran, and, well, I like the Army. And so I was biased, and I was asking them, what we could do, and they mentioned this PACE program, and it's a great program. Basically, the way it would work is anybody who's interested in joining the United States Army, as part of their contract, what would happen is that they would get a list of different employers, and among those employers are like Google, Apple, and now hopefully the city of Harlingen. And what they would be able to do is they'd be able to choose like 3 employers. And after they serve their tour of duty, whether it's 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, whatever it is, and after they leave the service, they would be guaranteed an interview with whatever employer that they chose. Again, this is not guaranteeing a job, but it's guaranteeing at least a step in the door where they can have an interview with the whatever business that they chose. And honestly, I cannot think of any type of employees that we would want more than veterans, because they would have the experience and the know-how and the discipline to be great employees in the city of Harlingen. And I urge each and every single one of these commissioners to vote for this, because this is great not only for the city and for the Army, but also for our youth, a lot of our young people that want to join and serve our country. And that's it. Any questions?
Sounds like a great program. All right, is there
Are you
a
in touch
motion?
with the Air Force?
Army.
Is there a motion to approve the MOU?
So
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 7, consideration and possible action to approve a facility use agreement between the City of Harlingen and the South Texas Little League for the use of the youth baseball fields at Pendleton Park. Javier?
Yes, Mayor, City Commission, this agreement here, the league, there was no activity in the entire year of 2020 due to COVID. So now they're ramping up and they're wanting to start their program. And so we took it to the Park Advisory Board for review. There was some recommendations that staff made to the board that we want to start implementing in the new contracts. And they're stipulated here that the city would drag and mark all the fields, because that's what we do right now. The current contract, or the former contract, stated that the leagues would do it, and it was very, very difficult for them to do that. So we agreed that we would start or change the language in the agreement to reflect what we're actually doing. The other thing we have in here is the entry fees. We clarified something. If there's going to be any fees charged, that it's only for tournaments and gameplay, not for practices or scrimmages. And then of course, the participants, the cheerleaders, players, coaches are not going to be charged either. And the last thing we added was on the insurance. We wanted to stipulate that if they don't have a current insurance certificate of insurance, that they would be in default. So sometimes we have difficult times trying to collect their insurance for these leagues, and so it goes on and on. So we wanted to put this stipulation in here that if they don't turn it in, then it becomes or it's a default in their contract. So we can terminate their contract if they don't turn it in.
So you mentioned that the drags and the lining, that they would do it before, and now we are doing it?
No, sir, we've always done it for years.
Or what are they transferring over?
I'm sorry?
Or what are we doing that they were doing before?
They weren't doing anything. So we've always done that. We've always dragged the fields. We've always striped them. But in the former contract, it stated that they were responsible for it. And so it was very difficult for them to, one, purchase the equipment, have staff, and so on and so forth.
But they were having to do it.
It wasn't a contract that they were supposed to do it, but they never did.
But it wasn't me.
Well, my question is, if we're going to take on that cost, did they lower their fees, or, because, I mean, obviously they have fees, and those fees are predicated on what it costs them to join or to participate, right, the bills that they pay? Or did they not lower the cost to the participants in the league?
Well, you're talking about for the
registration fees or whatever. I mean, obviously
Right.
there's a cost, right?
Right.
And they justify those costs because they say we got to do X, Y, and Z, right? And we got to get insurance, we got to do all this
Right.
stuff. And I'm glad you're tying up on the insurance. I know there's a lot of times that they didn't have it. Right. So having said that, if we're reducing that cost, I mean, did their costs reduce, or they're gonna keep it the same? And secondly, in their contract, are they required to show their financials and show that they, because some of the complaints we got in the past were they're using outdated equipment or not even safety equipment, or proper equipment. So are the parents getting what they need from the people that are running it, and the people that are running it being transparent with, yes, this is where we've invested money into the league?
So before we take the contracts to the board, we are required for them to provide their financials, their 501c3, that they're still a non-for-profit, their insurance, and then their board officials. And so we'll take that to them. So we'll review their financials before we take it to the Park Advisory Board for review.
So what's the process if they don't have the insurance? Do you give them a certain day notice, or is it automatic, or is it, how are you going to enforce that?
Well, so what we do is we have to send them notice, and it's stipulated in the current contract as far as notice to the leagues. But it wasn't stipulated in there that they would be in default if they didn't have a current certificate of insurance.
Okay. So if they do get a default, what's the process? Are we going to give them time to get
Right,
their,
I believe it's 10 days that they have to cure it.
Okay.
And then they would technically have no contract, so they wouldn't be able to use the fields, so.
Okay. And Mr. Stiles, is that something you review, those contracts? Do you get to review those?
Yes.
Yes, sir, it is 10 days.
Okay.
All right. Is there any other questions for Javier? Javier, have you finished your presentation?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. So this agreement is going to be for 6 months. So we're having them all terminate October or September 30th. So this contract will run for 6 months, and then we're going to take it back to the board for approval starting October.
Okay, very good. Then is there a motion to approve the facility use agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Item 8, consideration possible action to award, bid, and authorize the city manager to execute a concession agreement with CJ's Snow Cone for concession services at the Harlingen Sports Complex.
Yes, Mayor, City Commissioner, we went out for bids for the concession over at the Wilson Sports Complex. We did receive only one proposal, and I believe the listing is in your packet. CJ Snow Cone was a former concessionaire, and so they're going to continue with, if the city commission approves tonight, of course, and they're proposing to compensate the city $6,000 annually for each year. The contract is going to be for a 3-year contract. It'll be $6,000 per year. And just to also let y'all know, the contract, there was some typos in what we submitted on the compensation. Section 5, it is $6,000 per year for the 3 years. So each year they'll pay $6,000. It'd be $500 monthly. We've already made that correction for when it gets signed.
Does anybody have any questions for Javier before we ask for a motion to approve the concession agreement? Okay. Please, yeah, tell us who you are, please. Please come forward.
I think I have a loud voice. I don't need to. I just wanted to introduce myself. I am our name is CJ Snow Cones, and doing business as Kona Eyes of Harlingen. I am the owner myself. My name is Chris Valdez, and I know there's been some new city commissioners since we started our business back in 2016. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I wanted to be here because I know there's, like I mentioned, city commissioners and also city manager, which I don't know who he is. Is he here today? Oh, hi, Mr. Gonzalez. Myself, well, I didn't know who he was, so that's why I wanted to put a name to the face. And my husband is here as well, Jacob Valdez. So we are the owners of Kona Ice, and we're completing 6 years of business. It's like a mobile food truck, shaved ice. So I know I met some of you guys in city-sponsored events, and we're hoping to continue with our business. The Harlingen has been very supportive of our business, and like Mr. Javier Mendez said, we were the previous concierge for the Harlingen Sports Complex, and we had a very good relationship with him. He never heard anything bad about us, or I'm hoping not, or we never had any conflicts. So I just wanted to introduce myself, and thank you.
My kids and I love your snow cones.
Congratulations on your successful business. All right, is there a motion to approve the concession?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, item 9 is consideration of possible action to accept or deny the donation of $7,000 from Harlingen National Youth Football, which will be used to purchase and install fencing at the park.
Yes, Mayor, City Commission. Jerry Hernandez, the league president for the Harlingen National Youth Football, he approached us, and they had some money left over from their previous years, and so he wanted to donate. He wanted to install the fencing. I told him that we couldn't do it that way. We'd have to donate the money to the city, and then we would have the fencing installed. And so that's what this request is. We've taken it to the Park Advisory Board. They recommended approval. So whatever $7,000 gets us is what we would do. Is we would install the fencing. If there's any money left over in our budget, we would like to continue it to make the entire closure there at Victor Park.
All right. Is there a motion to
Motion.
accept the donation?
Second.
Any other discussion? It's a very generous donation from this organization, and we appreciate it. Is anyone here from the organization here tonight? All right. Well, we want to recognize them and thank them appropriately for this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Item 10, consideration and possible action to authorize the Public Works Director to use additional funds to increase purchase order 80933 for two 2023 Mack Carrier 151 Pinnacle rigs in the amount of $10,568. Rodrigo?
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. So in October of 2021, based on the previous budget, we were approved and we acquired a PO to purchase two 2022 Mack rigs that we use to haul material to the transfer station, out of the transfer station to the new landfill. Then in March 2nd, we were advised by Vanguard Trucking Company, which is the dealership in San Antonio where we order them from, that Mack, the major Mack, was stopped making 2022s, and they were only going to make 2023s. And so they called us. We negotiated the price because there was a price difference of a little. It came out to almost $17,100. We negotiated down to $10,500, and I'm here before you asking that if we can increase the purchase order 8933 in the amount of $10,568 to buy the new 2023 models, and based on the Vanguard dealership, we're expecting to get those rigs in mid to late April. And so
That's for both trucks?
I'm sorry?
The increase is for both, the 10,000 is for both?
That's for both, yes. So
motion for approval.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. All right, thank you, Rodrigo. Number 11, consideration possible action to approve a request to install speed humps at two different locations requested by concerned citizen on 25th Street, Van Buren to Jefferson, in front of Bonham Elementary, and Mendez Street between Kelly Street and Findler Drive.
Is this what we tabled?
Do we need to untable?
Do we have to untable this?
Make a motion to remove it from the table, please.
Motion to
Is
remove.
it ready for?
Yes, sir, it is.
ready?
We just to pass
Okay.
the second, yes, it's ready.
So a motion to
Second.
remove from table.
Okay, there's a motion to remove it from the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Oh, this was the item, Mayor, that the commissioners placed on the agenda. We've since changed the ordinance to make it easier for the speed humps to be installed, so we want to use that new criteria to actually look at these streets to see if they qualify, so we recommend approval.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. Item 12, board appointments. Are any board appointments?
I want to reappoint Ricky Leon to the EDC.
Okay. And I want to appoint Diana Esparza to the Parks Advisory Board.
I want to appoint Delia Cavazos Gomez to the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the board appointments?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. All right, item 13, the executive session regarding following items pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.072 to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and Section 551.087 to discuss and deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the city of Arlington has received from a business prospect with that governmental body seeks to have locate, stay, or expand near the city of Arlington, in which the city is conducting economic development negotiations related to the following projects. Project Spec Building 3, Project CH, Project Sheets, Project Italy, and B, pursuant to 551.072 Government Code regarding the purchase value of real property for economic development and other purposes, and C, consultation with legal counsel pursuant to 551.071, updating the commission on pending litigation. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, there are two items on the agenda relating to the executive session items which on which we could take action when we return. But for now, we're going to meet with our lawyers and our EDC advisor. Thank you.
One moment, Mayor.
All right, well, we're out of executive session at 7:21, and we're going to go to item 14, which is consideration and possible action on item 13A as discussed in executive session. Projects, Spec Building 3, Project CH, and Project Italy. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to approve the action as discussed in executive session on Project Spec Building 3, Project CH, and to direct the city attorney to proceed as discussed in executive session?
Motion.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. The motion carries. And item 15, consideration of possible action on item 13B as discussed in executive session. Is there a motion to approve the item as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, that concludes our meeting for the evening. So we're adjourned. Everyone, please have a safe evening. Good night.